So even if Polkadot ends up being a predominant market player here, I mean, that's was the 15 times the market cap. So assuming they end up on equal footing at some point down the line, then Algorand has grown 15 times as much as Polkadot. So given all the other factors, the reason why I'm confident for Algo, I still like the Algos quite a bit better than Polkadot. But
Hello and welcome to the Compounding Interest Podcast. I am here with one of our all-stars. This is Rich Casada, and he, if you have been watching the show, has been on several times talking about all kinds of cool stuff. And what I like to do in this podcast is bring in people to talk about things that they've researched, and we'll just kind of go through one-on-one with them. And Rich, you've been really interested in Algorand lately.
yeah, I think that's your fault though, Jesse. I started with your Medium article, by the way, which was a great introduction to decentralized finance. So for anyone who's watching this, if you haven't read Jesse's Medium article yet, I would go do that. And I started doing a really big push myself to do a deep dive into what I wanted to focus on specifically was long-term crypto investment. So the reason I've been scared off of crypto is because I've always seen it as kind of a pump and dump situation, with the exception of the major players. I mean, I get, like, Bitcoin has been a great thing to hold on to, so I'm not going to go so far as to call that not a good long-term investment, but I think there's caveats to that. So what I wanted to do was look for something that still had a lot of space to grow. And Jesse, your article was what really piqued me into that domain. So I got some notes, I did some research, but as an amateur investor, I have some business experience. So I think I have a pretty good idea about like real value in a corporation, but that's going to be limited. So I'm really happy to join you so we can bounce this off of each other. And you can tell me maybe where I'm wrong, or we can invite somebody to watch this to tell me or us we're wrong. That would be great. So I'm looking for feedback here. So
absolutely. Yeah. In case this needs to be said, let's just go ahead and make sure to say this. You probably don't want to take the advice of two random guys on a social media channel and base your life savings on what we have to say. So, we're just trying to poke our way through the veil, just like everybody else, trying to figure out what makes sense to us. And we're inviting you guys into that conversation, but that by no means is a guarantee of any kind of income or price changes or anything. This is what we think might happen, and we'll see, just like you.
Yeah, so it's precisely for that reason why I want to shy very far away from not only making short-term investment advice or giving short-term investment advice, but even thinking in that way, because I just have a really bad history of making really bad decisions and buying things at the peak. So I wanted to do things a little differently this time, and I wanted to take my ETF approach, where I'm looking for the really good long-term investments that have a lot of room to grow, but are obviously, with crypto, the diversification is a weakness of it. But let's dive into it. I'll open up my presentation, Jesse, unless you've got something else you want to add to that.
No, that's perfect. I think,
okay.
Well, and just to give the viewers a little bit of a background of what kind of research capabilities you have and what sort of caliber you are. You're actually a veteran of the Army. You're a captain, and you have a law degree, I believe, as well, right?
Yeah, I graduated from University of Tennessee College of Law. Went in after that. I did not practice law, but I was an officer in the Army. It was active duty, military intelligence. Had a short trip to Afghanistan. It was an office job, but is very research intensive, very analysis intensive. So that certainly doesn't make me an expert on anything we're talking about now, perhaps not an expert on anything at all, but I at least enjoy the process of research. So this is what I've come up with. If it's worth anything, who knows? We'll find out.
This kind of stuff makes you obsessive, and that
yes.
has value all its own. So I love it. Yeah, go ahead and tell me what you learned.
All right. Am I pulled up right now on the screen?
Yes. Yeah, it looks perfect.
All right, so looking at Algorand specifically today, and this is focused on a long-term crypto analysis. Like I already said, but I think it's important to talk about again. I have no clue what's going to happen in the short term, zero clue. And if you listen to me about what to buy without looking at anything else, you're an idiot. So it's really important to put that pin at the very beginning. Okay, so as I was looking through crypto, now to be fair, I already had a bias towards your article, Jesse. So what I'm doing now is trying to prove that bias wrong, and I'm failing at it. But I wanted to look at crypto that had great long-term potential. So what that means is that I'm now all of a sudden looking at 20 to 30 possible coins all at one time. I'm trying to figure out how to start ruling some of those coins out. So I built a criteria list for how I just start getting rid of coins. Now, again, this is long-term. This isn't to say anything that I'm ruling out isn't a great investment up to a year or 2 years from now. I'm looking at a 5 to 10 year time frame, which I think is really important to distinguish. Nothing that I've ruled out here doesn't mean it's not a great investment. This is just how I've gone about this decision-making process. So first, I wanted a coin to run on its own platform. And there's a lot of really good coins that are running off of Ethereum or that are running off of several other decentralized networks, and they are probably phenomenal investments. But this is just one of the criteria I use to make my decision making a little bit easier. I'm certain that I'm overlooking some really good investments this way, but I think at a 5 to 10 year time frame, I think the coins that are running on their own network are just a stronger long-term focus. So I've got examples on the next slide about what that means and what that looks like. Now, not only do I want the coin to run on its own platform, I want it to be a proof of stake, and this for a similar reason. There are some really great short-term investments that are proof of work coins, but I don't consider them a great 5 to 10 year investment. I consider them a great 1 to 3 year investment. So I think that's a very different time frame you're looking at, depending on what that means. Now, if there's anybody watching this who has no idea what I'm talking about when I talk about proof of work or proof of stake, I think the biggest way to illustrate that difference is just looking at Bitcoin. I think everyone's familiar with Bitcoin mining, and that's how they validate transactions, how they mine new blocks. I'm not a technical person. I can't go into any more detail than that, but I know that it uses an obscene amount of energy to mine Bitcoin. And I don't see that as a sustainable path forward in the 5 to 10 year time frame. But I still think it's a good investment in the short term. So for proof of stake, though, you have a lot of new coins, including what Ethereum is moving to, the number 2 coin. They're moving to a proof of stake where it's not energy intensive. They have an entirely different set of validation that stems from just how they're looking at who owns the actual coin, and they're making the transaction secure that way. Again, if you want to know the technical stuff about this, I'm probably not even explaining it correctly. All I know is that I like proof of stake for long term because it's not energy intensive. And if you guys want to know more than that, I suggest you do research on your own. Okay, so then I'm looking at number 3, long-term growth potential. So this is more of a business analysis, which I do not have an MBA. So my analysis here could potentially be limited. I fully admit that, but I'm doing the best with what I've got to work with. I think that one good metric for this is to look at how many partnerships a particular coin or a particular organization is taking advantage of. So the more partnerships, it's a better signal for long-term growth and stability. So that's one of the main metrics I use there. Number 4, must stake and offer rewards. So I think this is a really important thing for amateur adopters. I think for people who are looking at the 1 year time frame, even the 1 to 3 year time frame, staking isn't nearly as important because you're looking at the growth of the coin. I want a combination of the coin growth, and I want it to generate interest, and so I want more coins for free. So this is what I'm looking at there. And I also think there's a really good chance of long-term adopters looking at this the same way I'm looking at it, and they're saying, oh, great, I get interest off this. That's something. So I think that's an important factor. And then to start with, must be offered on Coinbase. That's where I started this analysis. I don't think that's a requirement going forward, but I think it helps. I know there's a famous Coinbase kick that happens when Coinbase brings in a coin. So this is, I think, the least important factor, but it's, at the time I was doing this research, that's what I had. I had Coinbase. So I'm using what I'm working with. Okay, so these are my my criteria. What I ended up with after running through all these 5 was that Algorand's the best way to go. And there's one other factor here, is just growth potential, which is the where the market cap is now compared to its closest competitors, and which one has the largest room to grow as far as market cap is concerned.
So basically, if they're doing the same things, but there's a big price difference in them, that's what you're focused on. Yeah.
Yes, that's a much better way to say it than I did. So thank you for that. Okay, so Jesse, do you have any concerns or questions about what I'm starting with here before we move on?
Not concerns or questions. Just wanted to emphasize that these are Rich's criterias, and
yes.
and they're pretty similar to my. I wouldn't say all of my criterias, because I have sort of two separate minds that I'm looking at these things through, and this is my long-term game right here. What he's showing is pretty identical to what I think of for long-term. I am also trying to enter into the 1 to 3 year game as well. But that's probably going to be more like a third of my portfolio, whereas this is going to be the bulk of it.
Okay, great. And I certainly don't want to take away from anyone who has different confidence levels than me. So yes, this is very unique to my comfortability level, my confidence levels, my risk aversion. So someone else is not going to share those factors, and so they're going to have a different way of looking at this. That's totally fine. Okay, so I'm trying to, okay. So here's the next thing. I just want to briefly address this, going back to long-term or short-term, or like 1 to 3 years versus 5 to 10 years. So this is what PayPal currently allows you to buy and sell on. I think this is really important. I think it's a great corporate signal for the top 4 guys who are not going anywhere. Not really top 4 by market share, but at least top 4 by reliability. And if not stability, at least these coins, they're not leaving. I think they're going to be a unit of exchange for at least the next 5 years. And even all the other factors aside that I'm talking about, I think you're safe to have something in these 4. So I don't want to go into too much detail about room for potential, because again, I think that's a little bit more outside of my expertise. That's in the shorter time frame. I will say, out of these, I think Ethereum and Litecoin have the greater growth potential. But again, this is an amateur. This is a presumption. This is a guess on my part. I really can't go into that much more detail than that, except that Litecoin has 82 million coin max, if I'm not mistaken. Bitcoin has 21 million. So it's 4 times the market cap, but their value is currently significantly underneath that. But they're splitting competition, Litecoin is, between Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash, and then every other altcoin. So you have to take that factor into account. And I'm not smart enough to do the math on that to figure out where Litecoin should be or where it's going. But I think you're safe with these guys. So I wanted to at least address that. Now here's where we get into a little more data. So what I did was, these are all of the coins. Some of them don't meet all of my criteria because they're not on Coinbase. But I think these are all the coins that are the major competitors to ALGO. Again, I started with ALGO. So what I'm doing is, I just want to see, like, wait a second, what am I missing here? Is there someone that's stealing steam from Algorand, or is there something that's more valuable that I'm just overlooking? And at the very bottom, I'm going to circle back to the Algorand specific benefits, but I think the short answer is no, I don't think I am missing something. Okay, so Jesse, precisely what you talked about. I think the most important numbers to talk about on this are your market cap. It's the center column. So if we're looking at Algorand, and you're looking at its chief competitors, and of course Ethereum is not currently proof of stake, but it will be. And not only will it be proof of stake, but Ethereum 2.0 will offer staking on Coinbase, and the preliminary number I've heard is over 7%. So I think that's really important. I think once that launches and is generally available, this could steal a lot of the steam from Algo investment. So I consider them the top tier competitor in the 1 to 3 year time frame. I have no idea when Ethereum is going to actually launch this. I think Ethereum 2.0 is already out. I think if you're smart, you can figure out how to go ahead and stake your Ethereum on a 2.0 network. I'm not that smart. I haven't put a lot of time into it yet. So, but I still consider them a number 2 competitor for the long term. I think Dot with the Polkadot, I think that's the next big competitor. They're one I've only been learning about recently, and I think they're the one I probably missed when I was in my initial hype for Algorand. I still like Algos a lot better, and the reason for that is the market cap. So you're looking at a 34.4 billion market cap. Jesse, do you see my mouse cursor here when I pull it in front of this? Yeah. Okay, so you're looking at a 35.2 billion market cap versus the 2.5 billion market cap. So even if Polkadot ends up being a predominant market player here, I mean, that's was it 15 times the market cap. So assuming they end up on equal footing at some point down the line, then Algorand has grown 15 times as much as Polkadot. So given all the other factors, the reason why I'm confident for Algo, I still like the Algos quite a bit better than Polkadot. But Polkadot's really strong. And I think they've got a good chance for, if anybody does take over Ethereum, I think it might be Polkadot who does it first. So that all depends on how fast the Ethereum 2.0 launches. But I like all these coins. I don't think you're necessarily bad with any of these guys. But the important thing is that with Algorand, and this is the ones I really want to go through here, your benefits are the easiest and the highest staking. And when you're on Coinbase, and Jesse, this is something you and I talked about before, Algorand sticks out. The algos stick out as an automatic 6%. And you can beat that by putting them in your Algorand wallet. That's super easy to download, and you're getting over 7%, at least right now. So I still think that's huge. I talked about this last time, and you were nice enough to have a clip of me at the very beginning of the episode saying this. You can stake with Polkadot, and I've read you can get 15% with it. So, wow. But then today I tried to learn how to do that, and I got confused, like really confused. So again, if I'm getting confused reading it, you're not going to get Grandpa to stake with your Polkadot. It's just not going to happen. Right. And I think they're also limited in how many they're doing. So I don't want to go through and like read everything on here, but I will talk about the benefits of Algo specifically. They won a huge development award this year in January. From what I can tell, just looking at corporate names and professionalism and degrees, I think Algorand easily has the most impressive board of anyone, the most impressive creator. I've seen some really great YouTube videos where people break this down in much more depth, so I'm not going to do that. But if you're curious about Algorand, I would do a quick Google search, pull up YouTube video, and see just the kind of muscle they're packing on their board. It's really impressive.
Silvio Micali has been teaching at MIT since I think it was 1983, and he was one of the people who was part of writing the paper that explained proof of stake. So very, very big player. And I think in a environment where trust is key, to have somebody of his caliber leading an organization, and I believe the Algorand Foundation is a nonprofit as well. So to have someone of his caliber leading the charge, that is a really, really major feature for me, at least. So I'm glad you brought that up, Rich.
Yeah, and on top of that, we're going back to partnerships. On my first list of criteria I'm looking at, I mean, Algorand already has the central bank digital currency running on it from the Marshall Islands. They have the USDC, the US coin, or at least that's pegged to the coin, run by Circle, which I think is owned mostly by JP Morgan. They are running that on Algorand, or they're at least in the process of migrating it to Algorand. I know you can store the coin on your Algorand wallet, which is a really big deal. They have a new partnership with two really big players, and I haven't done the due diligence of like looking at every single partnership and like weighing their costs, but these two really stuck out to me. Instamatch, which at least from what the internet tells me, they run hundreds of billions of dollars of transactions, is now moving on to Algorand, partnering with Algorand. And then you have a developer called Reach, which is turning Algorand into a plug and play for developers, and they get some apps going on the network. And I think a really cool feature, and Jesse, this is something we didn't really get to talk about last time, is the micro stock exchange. That it's already live, but not available in the US, as far as I can tell. It's kind of confusing. When you go to the website, it just says it's not available. So from what I could tell, it's this US regulatory problem, but you can currently buy and sell these somewhere else in the world. I don't know. But I think that's really cool, and I would have liked to go ahead and buy a micro stock and keep it in my Algorand wallet and store it like a coin. It's just a really neat feature. From what I can tell, I think one other really small player is like trying to do something like this, but I mean, none of these other big players are, as far as I know. I could be wrong about that, but from my initial research, this is it. And if this is the only network running a micro stock exchange, that seems like it's a good way to rush some adoption of the coin. So I mean, this is everything I've run through here. But if you're looking at market cap, the only one that's even below Algorand is CeeLo. So, and they have no staking. They have some really good funding. So they've been called like the Venmo for crypto. At least that's how they're trying to market themselves. But it seems like it's kind of limited to a payment platform. Whereas Algorand is not limited to a payment platform. They're doing a lot more, even though the technology between CeeLo and Algorand, at least on paper, they sound like they have similar functionality. I couldn't tell you how they weigh against each other, technically speaking. But otherwise, for me, it's between Algorand, Ethereum, and Polkadot. And of those three, to me, it's no contest about which one has the largest room to grow. It's always possible that Algo will have its thunder stolen from them and they end up going nowhere. But I mean, given the development, like we know there was an interview with a developer in Algorand saying they've got really big news coming in 90 days. I think this interview was given a few weeks ago. I'm very confident in the long-term success of Algo. I'm really confident in the year success of Algo too. I have no idea what's going to happen the next few weeks. But when you watch the value of Algo, it's been going up and down very, very steadily within like a 10-cent, 20-cent window. To me, that tells me it has a really strong floor and people aren't selling, they're holding. And then right now it's just people making money on the up and down, their limits of buying and selling. But it's got a really strong floor. I'm excited about this year. I think by the end of the year, we could see some strong growth. I don't want to even begin to pretend like I can predict what that growth is, but Jesse, I want you to stop me and talk. I've got like one more point. I want to talk about the maximum supply of algos and the staking interest. So I want to come back to that, but just see if you had anything to add or anything that stuck out to you.
Man, there's so much there, and I think that's such a great run through of what the case for algo is, that what I'm going to title this conversation is the case for algo, because I think you really made it succinctly, and you made it from the perspective of a layman, because that's what we are. We are not running these multi-billion-dollar companies. We don't have those kind of conflicts of interests as we examine this. I want to make clear to the viewers, I own Ethereum, I own Stellar, I own, half the coins on that list. I do own them. Okay, so I'm not against any of those coins, and I believe in all those projects that I've invested in for various reasons. But I own more algo than I own of the other ones, because like you were saying, Rich, it just has so much room to grow. Such a really strong team who is approaching it in a professional manner, in a wild west where everyone is a gunslinger that is shooting from the hip. I feel like the algo team, every time that I view something that they've put together, or visit their website, and just any feel that I get from Algorand, I really like, as far as it giving me confidence and giving me trust in the product that they're committed to delivering on. And I think that's why the Marshall Islands, I saw that you had that listed on there, but I don't remember if you mentioned that.
Yeah,
they've actually adopted it as their currency, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was on the bottom of my notes. But I mean, that's really exciting to me. And in fact, something else I didn't mention, there's only one other network I saw. Stellar is at least talking to Ukraine for a similar thing. But I don't see very much news from Stellar otherwise. I think XLM from Stellar is probably a good investment. I think every single coin I had on that list is a good investment. And to be clear, like you, I'm also highly biased. Like most of my crypto holdings are in algo, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I don't think you go wrong with any of those coins. And if I had to bet money about whether algo would be the highest growth this year, I'd say probably not. In fact, I'd say almost certainly not among those coins. So if like you're looking for 1 year gains, then I'd say keep some in algo for the long term, but this isn't going to be where you're going to make your 1 year gains on compared to other coins. Now, I still think it's a great investment short term, but I couldn't tell you if it was the best investment. Probably not short term. So, but I think nation state adoption is really important. I think that's a sign about future growth, perhaps more than anything else. Like corporate adoptions are important, partnerships are important. As far as I can tell, Polkadot leads the corporate partnerships. I think they have a higher number of corporate partnerships than Algorand does. I haven't done a side-by-side comparison, but that was my sense from glancing over it. So, but Algorand's growing. They've got some big players. That's why I wanted to mention the names I did. So yeah, I mean, and given the market cap, to me, that's why I think it's hard for me to say you could go wrong just putting some algo coins in your Algorand wallet and just letting it sit. I don't think you can go wrong with that. So
I want to give,
hopefully not.
yeah, I want to give some stats about settlement to just give people an idea of the scale of difference here. For Bitcoin to resolve a transaction and confirm it in their blockchain takes 10 minutes on a good day if everything's running smoothly. For Litecoin, it's about a fourth of that. They can do it in 2.5 minutes, which is a significant improvement on the technology. It's also much cheaper to do it through Litecoin. So
now with Litecoin, I had to move Litecoin from Coinbase to a wallet recently, and it took 30 minutes to do it. I don't know if this is just a high volume time. I mean, if Litecoin's taking 30 minutes, I think it's probably fair to assume Bitcoin would have taken 4 times that long.
Yeah.
But that's just to point out, you know, I think it's just to show you how some of these newer coins like ALGO and Polkadot, I mean, it's really, they are next generation coins. You're able to send this kind of money instantaneously. And again, like the exact technicals about who can do the most transactions per second, I've heard great things about how Algo is kind of leading that pack. I don't know if they necessarily have the highest one, but to me, I don't know, who cares? That's not that, you know, like who has the perfectly highest number of transactions isn't what's important to me. Just, are you like next gen or are you old gen? That's sort of what I'm looking at.
Right, right. Yeah, well, and this next gen, you know, when we say instantaneous, we mean somewhere between 2.5 and 4.5 seconds. That's what we're talking about with Algorand. So if you can imagine going to the grocery store and waiting 2.5 minutes for your Litecoin to confirm, because that's a best case scenario. It could be more like what Rich was talking about, where it's a 30-minute wait for that to confirm. Now, that's one scenario. Algo makes a lot more sense. You know, if you're going to be waiting there for 2.5 to 4.5 seconds for that to confirm, I can see that a lot more clearly at a grocery store. So I think that when we're talking about stabilizing price fluctuations, it has a 10 billion algo distribution. Like, that's how many algos are out there. They're not all out there right now, but it's slowly being released over the course of 10 years. And so there's a price stability to that because it's such a large base of coins. That's going to keep the price from fluctuating out of perceived scarcity. So you're going to see a smoother curve, like what Rich was talking about. It is not going to spike as the highest coin, almost for sure. Like I would be shocked if it spiked as the highest coin because it's so plentiful. It is not scarce, and it's not meant to be scarce. They want you to be able to build a solid foundation on it, and they want it to be a slow, steady wins the race kind of a coin. It's apparent in everything that they're doing. This is not a fly by night, try to cash in as much as we can. You know, this is we are building the future kind of a coin. And so that excites me. That excites Rich. You know, we met from Andrew Yang's campaign where, you know, he was talking about some of these ideas of abundance and changing the way that we do things to be more efficient and cut out the wastefulness and cut out the needless you know, expenditure of resources for no reason, just to balloon the you know, the wealth inequality. And that basically, that's what's happening with Bitcoin. The reason why it's going up skyrocketing is because of the scarcity. It's not the functionality, it is the scarcity that's causing Bitcoin to be under such price pressure. So which, you know, nothing against Bitcoin. I understand it was the first of the game. It's digital gold. It's got that you know, it sold that idea in people's minds. And I think we need some kind of a store of value against an inflating dollar. So I don't begrudge Bitcoin its success on that. But Rich, I think in the long term, as far as being something that's going to that everyday people can engage with. It sounds like what you were saying is Algorand looks like the top contender for that.
Yeah, in fact, especially since you can, since the U.S. dollar coin is running on the Algorand network, absolutely. If I could just keep some dollar coins in my Algorand wallet, and that way I could sort of swap them interchangeably with the actual Algorand that I'm keeping for interest. Like I see algos as an investment vehicle that I could convert to cash easily if I need be. But I think that's why it's so exciting that the U.S. dollar coin is the mechanism that you would actually use as currency, because it's stable, and then your Algorand is the investment vehicle. Now, some downsides to crypto, and this actually reminded me why I was so scared of it when I first started investing 3 years ago, is when you're sending or transferring crypto from one wallet to another, there's always a moment to me where I'm like, is this money lost forever? Like with the dollar bill, if you're transferring cash from your bank account to pay a bill and it fails, the money is still in your account. And it is frightening to me that if you get an address wrong, in some cases, apparently your money's gone. Yes. So I don't know if there's a way to resolve that problem. I think you're going to have a hard time getting super widespread adoption that way. I was reading some comments on Facebook about people who sent it to the wrong Coinbase address. Not Algo specifically. I think this was another coin, but it's probably true for every single crypto coin, that if you send it to the wrong address, you get really screwed. So if you're moving 10,000, 100,000, I don't like that kind of anxiety hanging over my shoulder. So I don't know how they can resolve the peace of mind issue with this, but maybe that's just what you have to deal with when you're dealing with decentralized currency versus a centralized currency. I don't know, but I was curious if you had any thoughts about that aspect of it, Jesse.
Well, maybe just diversifying into multiple wallets. So, having a Algorand wallet on their own app, having an Algorand on Coinbase, and then having so that it's not all of your eggs in any one particular basket. That's probably one of the things that I'm planning to do. And I want to have not necessarily all of my money on Coinbase the way that it is right now. I want to diversify into some other platforms so that just in case Coinbase goes down or has some sort of regulatory issue that I couldn't foresee, because I lost a lot of money on Ripple when that happened.
I did too, actually. I didn't lose a ton, but I lost some. And I was because that one company vanished, and they were one, by the way, that I think it was CNBC recommended to use to buy Ripple on. So, and I was like, wait a second. Because that's what I thought. I was like, well, I need someone smarter than me to recommend something, and this person needs to be reputable who's making this recommendation. And I still got burnt. I think it helps to have some of these under a regulatory scheme, at least, so us as customers have a little bit more peace of mind. Maybe there's some way to ensure these balances in the future, because that's essentially what a bank's doing. It's actually, and the credit card companies, they're insuring your account, and now they charge for it, so it's not free. But if someone hacks into my credit card and starts stealing money, the company insures that. So they say they give me my money back. So that, that's worth, I pay for that. Like, I gladly pay for that. So until crypto can kind of figure out a way to do the same thing. But I mean, we know PayPal offers these coins now on there. So it might just be as simple as my bank saying, hey, now we have a wallet for you. We can store and insure in your bank account. If banks start doing that, I think it's all bets off, and I hope people wouldn't miss out on the crypto investment in that instance. But
banks, I mean, for anybody who thinks that crypto is a risky asset class or something along those lines, I mean, I'm not saying that there's no risk to it. Obviously there is, but banks have been hacked. Your information has been hacked on just about everything that can be hacked has been hacked at this point. I mean, if it's connected to the internet, someone's figuring out how to break in. And so all the same problems that are an issue with crypto, pretty much all of those, I think, are also problems with our traditional finance structure. It's just that we sort of overlook it because we're numb to it, or we're blind to it because we've always been swimming in those waters, so we don't even see the water. But the risk is everywhere, so for example, I've made this comparison before where I think of dollars as being like inconvenient Dogecoins, because you can print as many of them as, I mean, there's really no limit on how many dollars the Federal Reserve can print. And so I don't take a great deal of comfort in holding dollars. And I think that is why I've been so attracted, just like all of the big investors, all the hedge funds, all of them, we're all thinking the same thing, that there's a lot of dollars entering circulation. The value of the dollar will decline. I don't want to be holding dollars. So yeah.
Well, I see an investment in Algos, the Algo coin, as holding equity in the Algorand Foundation in exactly the same way that a stock is holding equity in a company. That's how I see it. I view holding Algos as a stock that I get interest on, except I'm looking at it. Obviously, I'm not liquidating any of my traditional investments to do this, but I think getting 7% interest for a few years plus a rising value in coin, I don't think you're going to beat that investment without something that's extremely speculative. And the other reason why I like algos so much is now after 10 years, those staking rewards I think are vanishing when they have a full distribution of their coin.
Yeah.
But for 10 years, the investment, it looks like, from what I can gather, the reward percentage is going to go up a little bit in the 3-year to 5-year time frame, and then it'll start going down as you get closer to all the coins being distributed. But what that means is basically whatever coins you have invested now, you're going to double that over the 10 years, because that's what the compound interest is going to do. It's going to double whatever you have in right now. So I'm trying to think of my investment in algos like that. I'm trying to think, how much do I want to have in right now so I can plan on that doubling in 10 years. And then I want to think about how much algos are going to be worth in 10 years. And then that's a good investment that you're left with at that point. So, and if you're 7% interest, or a little bit above 7% interest, you need 5,200 coins to get a coin a day. Obviously, most people aren't going to be able to afford 5,200 coins at what is now $1.40, and will probably be a lot more than that soon. But that's, you can do fractions in your own head and kind of figure out how many free coins you want per day based on just 5,200 coins gives you 1 coin a day. So it's just really exciting to me. I don't know why more people aren't exciting. I think the thing that's the biggest mystery to me, and why I keep trying to prove myself wrong here, is it makes no sense to me why algo is not already bigger than it is. So to me, that is a red flag. Although the Algorand press seems kind of muted, maybe that's deliberately so. Maybe Algorand is kind of waiting to make some big announcements before they launch something. They're letting big players come in and get their investments in before they sort of open this up more and let the coin value float up. I don't know, but that is a big red flag. I was curious, Jesse, if you had any thoughts about why algo isn't already worth more than it is.
Yeah, it actually kind of does make a little bit of sense to me, because and I'll tell you the reason why. It's a lot like Amazon. They, for a long time, were not the favorite. They were not the sweetheart of Wall Street. People thought, what is this thing? It's operating at a loss. This is not going anywhere. This is a terrible company. And by standard metrics, by the kind of thinking that Wall Street and the mainstream media and just all of the people who have power right now, the way that they're going to be thinking about it, they are not going to be interested in something like the long range planning that went into Amazon, or the long range planning that's going into Algorand. To your point, once all those 10 years worth, the 10 billion algos are out in circulation, there are no more, right? So that the scarcity that Bitcoin will still be, mining, and still be, there's still going to be some Bitcoin that you can mine up until 2140. There's not going to be any more algos after 10 years. Like, they're all going to be out there, is my understanding. I don't think there's any more minting or releasing that's going to be happening.
Can I just say, I actually hope that they're not still mining, because I just hate the concept of mining. I think it's so stupid. Just the amount of energy it's just thrown in the trash for a completely arbitrary task.